Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here today with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, Pete Wright. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Nikki Kinzer.
Hi.
Hi. This is a very exciting day. We're going to be talking about friendships. Oh, Pooh.
Oh,
Pooh and Pig. It makes me think.
Piglet.
Friendships always makes me think of Pooh.
And Honey. Yeah.
Oh,
I love Pooh.
We're talking about friendships. This came from a listener,
Yes.
right? I mean, this was a listener question.
Yeah, so I had actually posted in our Patreon Facebook group. I was saying, I'm looking for content. We're getting back to doing the show weekly. What do you guys want to know about? And friendships came up. And what was even better is that once I decided that we were going to talk about friendships, I put another post in the Facebook group asking what they wanted to know specifically about friendships and got some great feedback. So this show is actually going to be a part 1 and a part 2.
Very exciting.
And so I will talk a little bit more about that after you do your introduction. That's so awesome.
I love to do introductions. So before we talk about friends, head over to TakeControlADHD.com. You can get to know us and this show a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there from the website or subscribe to the mailing list from the homepage, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. And if you like the show, if you like what you've heard, if you've learned something from us over the past many years that we've been doing it, consider supporting this podcast over on Patreon at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/The ADHD podcast. It's listener-supported podcasting. It's a way for you to throw a few bucks at the show and help us continue to grow and continue to do more things and deliver more things to the ADHD community. We're very excited to do that. We've just upgraded our tiers, and so you can see the levels of investment you can make in the show and what you get as a result of your participation in the community. The coolest one, I think, is going to be a Discord, where we're trying to create this community of ADHD folks who want to share and learn from each other and have access to all sorts of fun community resources in a real-time chat experience. So if you've never played with Discord, you can learn more about Discord and connect it to your Patreon account at patreon.com/The ADHD podcast. Okay.
And I just have to say real quick about Discord.
Yes.
For people who are new to Discord, I'm new to Discord as well. So we are learning together. Now, Pete is an expert in everything technology, so it's going to be fine for him. But
that's not true. She's lying about that.
I'm still figuring it out as well. But so far, so good. I like what I see. So I think this is going to be a great way to connect with our listeners, but also to connect for our listeners to connect with each other, which I think is fantastic.
Totally. And I will also give a shout out to Rachel in the Discord community, who's already in the Discord community, who has been incredibly helpful in just helping me process and think about the kinds of things we want to set up and the kinds of resources we want to set up. So a big, giant, huge, heaping shout out of thanks and gratitude to Rachel for being a part of the community and being such an active support for us too. So
yes.
Thank you,
and she's
Rachel.
also willing to help people get used to Discord too. So
yes.
You may not just see Nikki and Pete. You also may see a Rachel, going in there and helping you out as well. So you've got 3 people that, can get you set up on this pretty easily.
Yes. And it was great that, as soon as we turned on Discord rewards, a number of people already jumped in there because it's automatic, right? As soon as you connect to Patreon, it's automatically in there. And so it's really nice to see names trickle in, folks who are already experienced with Discord. So I'm sure once you jump in there, you'll see more active folks. But we're definitely there. Me and Nikki, we are there, and we're very excited to participate. So we do have one more announcement. Nikki, you want to talk about coaching?
Yes, group coaching. Fall group coaching is open. The deadline to enroll is September 5th. And so you've got a couple weeks to decide which group you want to join. See how positive that is? Not if you're going to join, just which group you're going to, participate in. But I've got a couple of groups going on. One is on Mondays at noon Pacific, and the other one is on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. And they're great. I love them. It's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to get motivated, inspired, get some new ideas, but it's also for accountability. We talk about what your focus is going to be for the week. We get updates on that. We will keep in touch in between the sessions. So there's a lot going on. Plus, I've added a couple of new things to group coaching, which one of them is a weekly workshop that is just for the coaching groups. So what I do is I listen. Surprisingly enough, as a coach, I do that. I listen
from time to time.
And I pick a topic that feels like it's relevant to both groups. It's something that's maybe been brought up a couple of times. So I don't actually pre-plan these workshops until after I've listened to what's gone on that week. And so that's something that's new. And then we also have, I've added a focused work session where everybody from the groups is invited to work with me on Thursday afternoons, anytime between 1 and 5. And we do video pomodoros. And I can tell you, it is so effective.
Yeah. So talk more about that. What does that look like?
So we jump onto the conference line that we would normally meet, on our weekly sessions, and we're on video. And everybody that's there talks real brief about what they're going to be working on in the next 25 minutes. And I set the timer for 25 minutes, and then we check back in. We take a little 5-minute break, and we do as many of those pomodoros as people want. So some people can only do maybe 1 or 2. Some people's max is 4. I'm there from 1 to 5. So that's my commitment for these fall groups, that's when I'm always going to be there. But the groups can also do it themselves too. So even if I'm not there, they can create their own focus session, with each other and, guide that with themselves too. So, it's something that I started a couple of groups before, and it's just really effective, and it's effective for me too. I get a lot done. People can work on the computer, they can do organizing, they can do laundry. I mean, they don't have to stay at their desk. I mean, you can be wherever you want to be. But there's something about that video that I think makes it more effective than just on the phone or through Slack or Discord or whatever channel we go through. I
think that's great. And I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like doing more accountability runs in more different kind of contexts are great. Like having someone else run the clock for you.
Yeah.
And we can do that in Discord. I was thinking we have an accountability chat room set up, and I was thinking about doing timer runs too.
I think
exactly. That's great. So more of that, the better.
Right.
All right. So let's go check out the homepage on the website. You can sign up for coaching and get in there, get your seat registered, because if summer is any indication, these things are going to fill up.
Yes.
So there you have it. Thank you, everybody. Now let's talk about friends.
Well, we have a follow-up.
We do. We want to read this follow-up. This is great.
Well, this is sort of like a friend follow-up.
Yeah, it's a friend intro. It's a segue.
Yes.
It's a friend way.
Yes. So, I'll go ahead and do this one, but then we have a question that came in too that we need to talk about before we get into friends. So,
okay, let's do this first.
But yes, the follow-up was, it was probably Facebook Live that somebody was asking about support, and, sometimes our families and friends aren't always as supportive as we would like them to be. Well, anyway, this is what she followed up with me. She said, I participated in one of your online chats about a month ago. Asked the question about finding support when your family doesn't accept your diagnosis, even if they obviously have symptoms themselves. I wanted to share with you that I have started the first meetup group in Perth for adults with ADHD. We've only had 2 catch-ups so far, but I'm so happy that now I can personally connect with other people who do get it. So far, the feedback from everyone has been the same. They are really excited that there is somewhere that they can go and chat to people who understand and won't judge them, but in fact relate and support them. I'm really looking forward to growing our little community and help remove the stigma that surrounds ADHD and associated mental conditions.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice.
So I think this is fantastic. She took the initiative to get it going, and I bet it's going to be. I think it's going to grow, I'm sure. And I just think that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. And I hope that other people are inspired that, keep digging, keep looking for your tribe.
Let me just ask real quick. How often do you hear that when that family community that they don't buy the diagnosis?
Well, often enough that it was actually on my Facebook Live yesterday too, because there was another actual question, different situation that they were having a hard time with a family member because I don't know if they didn't believe ADHD existed, but they didn't believe that she had ADHD.
Yeah.
And I talked to my groups about this, one group last week, because I wanted to get their opinion on it. Before I did the Facebook Live, and they all experienced having somebody not believe them. So this is definitely not something that people, it's more common than not. Yeah. And in the group, 2 out of 3, those relationships no longer exist. They don't talk to those people. So it can go to an extreme.
My mother didn't buy my diagnosis. Like maybe I've talked about this. Like when I first had the diagnosis and finished the, testing and counseling around it. And I said, here's a thing that explains a lot, don't you think? And I don't know if I approached it incorrectly, but she was like, no, you don't have that. And it always comes from a place of, surely I would have noticed. Surely I would have seen it. All of the struggles that you had in those years when I was responsible for you and your health and well-being, surely I wouldn't have missed something so obvious. But it took a long time to kind of normalize to that and say, look, this is a big part of my life, and we're going to have to deal with it and move through it. And we did, and it was great. And now there's great understanding, but it was hard. It was hard for a couple of years, surely. So I really resonate with that. That's great follow-up. So, okay, so we have this question. Do we want to move into the question?
Yes, I do, because I actually responded back to her telling her that we would talk about that, or we would bring this up this week. So I don't want to, not deliver on a promise that I did.
No,
so
you made good.
I need to make good. So do you want to answer or not answer? Well, you're going to answer the question too, but do you want to read it? Because you're so good at reading.
Well, okay. I've been doing it all my life. Here we go. Do you have any advice on how to deal with annual work reviews? I'm a decent employee, but no one at work knows I have ADHD. It's always stressful to have my neurotypical supervisor critique everything all at once, especially when most of the productivity issues come from my ADHD symptoms and not from a lack of trying. How do I honestly appraise my strengths or weaknesses in my written review without coming across as willfully self-deceiving or woefully lacking in self-confidence?
I think the educational piece that I want to throw out there for people is to understand that, and we've talked about this before, emotions run high, and they run even higher when you have ADHD. So if you feel that you're being criticized, it's going to be really tough. You're going to take it really personally.
Yeah, and you're going to respond hot. You're going to respond hot. Yeah.
And so I think, just understanding that is, it just is. So there's nothing wrong with you. I don't know if there's any way you can fight those feelings. I think the best thing we can do is probably just acknowledge that they are there. What I would probably suggest is that, when you're going into the review, mindfully go into that. Okay, if I'm starting to feel heated, give yourself a second. Give yourself to sort of think before you speak, because you don't want to say anything that you will regret. So there is going to be probably a little bit of practice that you're going to have to maybe do on how am I going to deal with the situation if I don't like what I hear? How am I going to be able to again, stop before I say something I would regret. What's interesting to me is that one of the things that they're concerned about is the productivity issues when knowing that it's not a lack from trying. And I think that's important to bring up, is that the truth around your ADHD. You know that your intentions are not to not do a good job. And so if you're not comfortable talking to your boss about your ADHD, you certainly can still talk about what you're challenged with and what you're really good at and what do you need help with. So if he's or she is finding that, you're lacking in this type of situation, or, you're rated a little lower in this area, what are the things that you need to help you succeed in that? So it's not, I think it's taking the ADHD out of it, because we've talked about this before, and just really talking about your strengths and weaknesses and where you need support.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I think that's something that people forget, when you think about, and especially if you're sort of new to ADHD, right?
Mm-hmm.
The label of ADHD is this giant, you feel like it's a giant rubber stamp on your forehead. And it doesn't have to be. You can have a candid, transparent conversation about the characteristics of ADHD that you happen to live with without using the words ADHD. You can pretend for the world at work that ADHD isn't a thing that you're thinking about. Just talk about, here are the things that I need help with. Here are the areas of focus that I struggle with. Here's where I'm really exceptionally good.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly have lived with this. I'm one of those guys, when I walk into a new environment, particularly in my field, like around technology and space, I always, I'm the guy who walks around and opens all the cabinets, I have to explore everything, and I can't quite move on until I've done it, until I know where everything is. And that's a little bit of my obsessive nature that comes out of ADHD. I've accepted that. That's how I need to talk about what I am without naming the ADHD part, if you don't want to talk about it. And that is totally okay. Yeah. So I think that's, really having a catalog of your experiences and those characteristics that impact you will go a long way toward having better reviews that you feel like you can trust and learn from.
Absolutely. Well, and the only thing I have to add to that, which is very similar to what you're already saying, is when she's talking about writing her own review, like, because how a lot of times you have to kind of evaluate yourself. Yeah. And she's asking, I don't want to be self-deceiving, but I also don't want to lack in confidence. And I think that this is where what you just said, you just be honest and transparent about what you need, what you're good at, where you need that extra help. Again, without having to name the ADHD, but also not coming as, you're not self-deceiving anyone. You're not lying about it. And it's not coming out of self-confidence. This is just how you work. This is what you need to work at your best. And so just add that to that piece. So there you go.
There you go. Excellent.
Now we can talk about friends.
Let's talk about friends. It comes as an inspiration from our own Patreon friends. Thank you, Patreon friends. Let's talk a little bit about some ideas around friendships. How do we get an idea of how ADHD gets in the way of friendships? How would you like to open this conversation?
Well, there's going to be a part 1 and a part 2. So for today's show, we're going to talk about just giving you some information about how ADHD may get in the way of these friendships, and also give you some ideas, some takeaways to think about with your friends, your current friendships. And then in part 2, we are going to answer, you and I, Pete Wright, are going to answer the specific questions that our Patreon members had when it comes to these relationships. So that's how we're going to do it. And so for today, let me ask you, Pete, what do you think about your friendships? I mean, we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah. How are we doing?
I think we're doing great.
We're doing okay?
Yeah.
I think my friendships, I have a lot of, or I don't have a lot. I have a solid handful of strong old friendships. And sometimes I get confused about why it is difficult to make new friendships, to create new friendships, right? So that's where I struggle, because I think there really is something to age and new friendships.
Oh, so yes, I totally agree. It's
And
hard. It's harder
sucks.
as you get older.
Right? It is harder.
Yeah.
It is harder when you don't have that sort of shared forced history, right? And so that's a significant challenge for me. But I'm not sure. I'm sometimes how that's different from or how ADHD impacts that. I definitely have been the guy, particularly in college when I didn't understand this so well, to make plans and skip plans, right? To just flake out on stuff, to leave friends sitting in a dark movie theater saying I would be there for the 12:30 show and maybe show up 2 hours later, because in my head it just went to whenever I got to the theater, not when the movie actually started.
Right.
So I was that guy, and it took a long time to realize that I have power to learn to change that, and a lot of work to change that. So those kinds of behaviors really impacted me.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because when I did a little bit of research and I was thinking about this, maintaining friendships, I think, is probably the challenge, or the question that I get asked from clients is, how do I maintain them? And it's interesting if you look at the connection between, okay, what would it take to maintain a friendship, and what are executive functions? And so if you think about it, well, as I did last night when I was putting this together, it's really interesting because you think about one of the executive functions that ADDers have a challenge with is getting started, taking that initiative. Okay. Well, when we have friendships, it's hard to be the one who takes initiative to say, hey, let's go have coffee. Let's go to a movie. Let's go do that. It's not going to necessarily come from you. You could go ahead and get something scheduled and, you put it on your calendar. But if you're not in the habit of checking your calendar, which is a time management issue, which is an executive function, right? Organizing time, then you miss the appointment. You don't see it. You don't show up. Or maybe you see the appointment, but because again, time is not your friend, or it's a little messy relationship that you have with time.
Friend, right.
Yeah. Now you're running late all the time to go see your friends. And then again, there's this executive function of not following through. So do you cancel, or do you just not show up to something, right? So it was really interesting. I was like, wow, that's interesting when you kind of look at it that way. That, well, of course, maintaining friendships is kind of difficult, when you look at it this way. Finding time for your friends. Now, some people, this is really easy. Like I have clients who have very active social lives, and, they go out to drinks with their work buddies, and they've got things that they're doing every weekend. They're very social. They're very outgoing. And this comes very easy to some people. Finding time is not an issue, but for some people, it's really difficult to find time. And especially if you've got other obligations like families and kids, and, if you do volunteer work. I mean, the more, it seems like the busier you are, the more, the harder it is to find time to do these things.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you're talking about. I mean, it's already hard to balance, competing time blocks on your calendar when you can't focus on your calendar and you don't have that skill of visualizing time. How could you possibly throw in another giant boulder of time, which is maintaining a healthy relationship? Well,
and it's really easy, at least I think for myself, to say, okay, well, that isn't, yes, I want to see her. Yes, that sounds like a lot of fun, but I really need to go do this other thing. And so it doesn't feel as important as something else that may be, grabbing my attention. But what's always funny to me about that is whenever I fight that and I say, no, this is important. I need to reconnect with this person. After I do it, oh my gosh, I feel so happy that I did it, because it's so good for your soul, right? You're like connected again with somebody else. And so friendships are very valuable, very, very valuable. So we need to probably, shift our thinking about this whole time thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say one of the big lessons for me is it took me many years to figure this out. I used to have this mentality that I don't want to call a friend until I have a giant block of time to really dive into, everything that has happened since we last spoke. And that's a mistake.
Yeah.
When the relationship becomes really powerful is when you say, I have 3 minutes. I'm just going to call, say hi.
Right.
I need to hear their voice. I need them to hear mine. That goes so far in maintaining a healthy relationship, even when you don't have the big block of time to do it.
You bet. That's a great point. The other thing that can come up is that you're tired. Well, that doesn't surprise me, really. Like if you're what happens is you make plans to go out with somebody on a Wednesday night, but then Wednesday was a hard day and you're tired, you're mentally tired, you're physically tired. And so now you really don't want to do what you said you were going to do because you didn't really take into account that you're just really tired. And if you think about the ADHD mind, you're running around all the time. That's exhausting. Right. It is mentally exhausting. So, that's something that can get in the way of maintaining friendships. And then keeping in touch. So what you just talked about was interesting because I think having those just quick little 3-minute conversations or even text messages, hey, I'm thinking about you. I hope you have a great day. That is really good. I mean, it's special to kind of keep that connection there just so that they know. I mean, who doesn't want to get a text message that says, hey, have a great day? That's nice. I mean, that's just it's going to make your day a little happier. This is the thing that I think is really interesting though. I had a client a few years ago. This happened a long time ago. And she felt so guilty about not keeping in touch with some groups of, or, some people, some of her friends, like groups of friends. And the guilt was so bad that she just kept avoiding it and avoiding it and avoiding it. And then eventually just kind of thought, well, it's too late now. It's not gonna, it's just too late.
I've torched the relationship.
Right. And so we kind of talked about, well, who in these group of people, like who really means a lot to you? Like who would you really like to reconnect with? Because I do think that friends kind of can come and go in different seasons of your life. And I think that they're there for different reasons. And so, I think, for me, I've had really good friends at certain like work situations, but then when I stopped working at that place, those sort of kind of faded, but we're still friends. But, you have to kind of think about for her, who do you really want to reconnect with? And she figured that out and she got over that uncomfortableness, that embarrassment, and sent an email and just said, hey, I've been thinking about you. I'm really sorry that I haven't been in touch. I hope you're doing well. Here's an update on what I'm doing. And what was really surprising to her is that no one rejected her. No one got mad at her. Nobody was, it was this friendship got, reconciled. And, I think that what we sometimes do is maybe because we feel so guilty about it, but the other people maybe they're feeling guilty because they haven't reached out or they're just as busy as you are.
Yeah.
And so
no one exists in a vacuum. I totally think that's true. Like we have this image that as soon as we leave the presence of our friend, like somehow they just power down, you know what I mean? Like they're just, they don't exist when we're not there. So clearly I that's part of our sort of natural egocentrism. That's just kind of how humans operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's something that I think is important to keep in mind is that if you have somebody like that you really would like to reconnect, go for it.
Yeah.
Let's just go for it and see what happens. And, if that person comes back saying, rah, 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 and starts yelling and screaming at you, then they're not a good friend anyway.
Right. Maybe they
you don't want
the
them
right
in your
choice.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You move on. But I do think for anybody, I think it's important that we also think about what are the qualities that we want in our friends. What is important to you, looking for people. And this is kind of, I guess, if you're looking for new friendships, but looking for people who share the same interests as you, being around people who are okay with you being spontaneous or won't be offended if you cancel on them. Being honest about your ADHD, building that trust. I mean, I think that there's that transparency again about what your strengths are and what your challenges are. And if you're honest about that with your friend and, your friendship is based on acceptance and understanding and support, then a lot of these things shouldn't get in the way. And I think that, relationships in general, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be understood, and we want to be supported. And those are the people, that you gravitate to. And to me, it's always been important that I don't need a large group of friends. I just need a small group of friends that if something happens, I know who I could, talk to or lean on.
Who's going to help you hide the body? That's the question.
Yeah.
Those are your friends.
Who are those people?
Wow,
that went to a different place.
That's what we always used to say when I was in high school, like, oh, we're so best friends. I'd help you hide a body. Like that.
That's awesome.
Is that weird? Is that?
That's a little weird.
Okay. Well, I'll take it. I own it.
Okay. So I just have a couple little other things that people can take away. And then, as I said, next week, we'll answer some of the more specific questions around friendships. I've already talked about reaching out. So even if you feel guilty, really try to reach out anyway. Go for it. Staying in touch. I think you hit that earlier, just these little text messages, these little things that we can do, because out of sight is out of mind. We know that. We know that with our stuff, and we know that about time. If we don't have a clock in front of us, we're not going to know what time it is or, what that feels like.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I feel like this has become really important, at least for me, because I have a lot of friends who are abandoning Facebook, who formerly counted on Facebook for those kinds of friendship reminders. It's somebody's birthday, so-and-so is it. And I just want to encourage people to make direct connections, not by way of Facebook on somebody's birthday, right? Let's take a step back, keep birthdays in your calendar, get an alert, and send them a text message. Don't rely on Facebook because you can't be sure that they're seeing it anymore. It used to be you could be sure if they were on Facebook, they would likely get a notification, but you can't anymore. The number of people I run into who write me weeks later saying, thank you so much for sending me that note. I'm not on Facebook all that often, even though my account's still active. I just don't check it. But I really appreciate you doing that. You can have a direct, immediate connection with people, and it usually means more if you eliminate that sort of middle ground, that middle app.
Oh, I absolutely agree, for sure. And going back, I think, so switching gears from that is setting up a regular time to meet with the people that mean the most to you. And so what does that look like? Does it mean that, you meet with a group of people every, the first Monday of every month? Or do you have a weekly coffee date with someone? Or do you have a couple, every once a month coffee date with somebody? But I think it's getting it on your calendar. Even if you by chance can't make it, I think it's just keeping it in front of you and making an effort, putting the systems in place for you to remember to do it. Because again, that out of sight, out of mind can definitely make a difference. We are going to do a podcast on listening in about 3 or 4 weeks. But I do think, to give you a little bit of a preview of that, is practicing your listening skills with your friends, because a lot of times people are concerned that they're interrupting. They're talking over people. They're not listening. And so I think that there's something to build off of here is, how do you become a better listener, and how does that affect your friendships? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Like I said, in a few weeks, I'm going to bring that up as a conversation. But I think the bottom line is, as we said, friendships are really important. They give us connection. They add fun to our lives. It gives us a chance to process and talk about things. Especially those older friends that have a lot of shared past memories. I mean, there's those people that you can see once a year, but you feel like you just left off with them. I mean, they just know you. They just know you. And so I think it's an important thing to focus on and to work on, because they're important.
I have a regularly scheduled coffee date with the best man at my wedding, one of my oldest and dearest friends, but he lives in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And so we just decided every Wednesday at 11:30 for lunch, we meet on FaceTime. And we just sit at our desks and we talk for an hour over lunch. And it has become central to my week, both literally and figuratively. It's right in the middle of the week. It is a high point of my week to have a direct connection where we process things, we come up with new ideas, we work on projects together. We're in very different circles, and yet it's hugely important. I cannot stress enough how, if you just think creatively about how you're going to make time in your schedule, how important it can be to you to nurture those friendships. I think this is so great. So great. So there you go. We're going to take on the questions next week. Anything else we have to report to the people?
Nope, that's good.
I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to the show. We sure appreciate your time and your attention. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch up with all of you friends, next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.